Hey guys, it is Wednesday, October 16th, and I haven't done a short video in a while. I've been busy with a lot of other things. So I thought I would sit down and take a step back and look at some topics. And obviously we have the election coming up. There's a lot of passion behind Trump or Kamala Harris. But I've had to divorce myself from it a little bit. Just sort of step back and look at really what's realistic. What's realistic with politics? What are we going to accomplish? And what is our goal? And sometimes we get in the weeds. Sometimes we need to step back and we need to reevaluate everything. And so I thought to myself, what is my goal for America? I don't know how much longer I will be here. I'm in good health. Don't get me wrong, but I'm getting older. But what do I want? What do I want to see out of America? Well, I want America to be prosperous, a great nation where we have factories, we develop new technologies. Maybe we go to the moon again. Yes, we did go to the moon and head to Mars. I like the Elon Musk spirit. I want that sort of America. I want an America that embraces liberty, free speech, so people can speak freely without the risk of being fined or going to jail or losing your job. I want that type of America. And I want an America that is basically good, meaning clean. So there's not poop in the streets, there's not homeless everywhere. People can walk down their neighborhoods or their small towns without fear of being robbed. So there's not much crime. You don't have sexual degeneracy everywhere. Yeah, I'm not a prude. I know there's always going to be some of that, but I want a society that's basically functioning and wholesome and represents our values. That's what I want. So those are like the top three things. Then I look about, well, how do we get there? Because we seem to be going in an opposite direction right now. It seems like economically we're starting to crumble. Despite all the bullshit that's put out, I think everyone kind of feels something has really gone wrong. And we see other nations like China, Japan, and even Russia start to really build up, and we just seem to be receding. We can't build anything. We have tons of homeless. Just something seems wrong. Young people, they find it hard to afford a new home, to start the American dream. And we have all this bitter racial politics. And despite what the government says, there's a lot of violent crime, which, by the way, they just revised the statistics. You remember Kamala Harris was saying, violent crime is down. Well, they revised the statistics. It's not down, it's actually up. So a lot of us get the feel that America is going on the wrong track. I definitely do that too. And it saddens me because while I don't care about the government, I love my country. I love America. My family has been in America since, actually, we traced it back to the 1600s. So the original people that founded this country, this is in my blood, this is my soil. And I hate to see a bad outcome from it. But then I looked at, what are the realistic solutions politically and what would have to be done to make it happen? Well, the first scenario, and this is what I think the mainstream GOP does, or the MAGA GOP, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but it's not really so much racially focused. It's like we got to implement certain things, and yeah, we have to get control of our immigration, and we got to get just smart people in here. We don't want criminals in here, but we need to focus not so much on race, just hire the best people and just reinvent America that way, which makes a lot of sense. And again, if we got to the goals of prosperity, a safe environment, we still have liberties, I'm on board with that. The question is, can we get there with a majority that's not white? That's the big question. And it's a complicated question because I don't believe everyone is exactly the same. And it's too easy to put a category. There's whites and then there's non-whites. Well, there's a lot of variation among non-whites, right? And, you could have a white Hispanic or an Asian that's quite a bit different than, let's say, a Haitian. All right. There's a lot of variation in there. And even within whites, you have the people that founded this country, the British, the English, like my heritage, the Scottish. And then you have Italians and Irish and German and so forth. And historically, at least within the white community, everyone sort of assimilated in. Around here in Fayetteville, just north of town, there's a little city called Tontitown. Tontitown. If you're ever in this area, check it out. And what's unique about it is every year they have a big spaghetti festival and wine festival. And you're thinking, yeah, wine in Arkansas? Yeah, because 100 years ago, a bunch of Italian immigrants of all places, usually they went to New York City, but there's a group that came to Arkansas. And, it's a long story, but they ended up in Tontitown and they created a vineyard and wines and they had their own community. And, over 100 years ago, this was all white, pretty much Scots-Irish Protestant community. And here you have this little Italian community. They speak Italian, they're Catholic. They didn't really fit in. But they started their little town there, and every year they had their celebration of the vineyard or harvest time. And they would get together and do that as a town. Very close-knit community because they felt like they were outsiders, and they were to this area. But now, I joked, I said to Sasha, oh, I wonder if they seem to speak English pretty well here now. Because they're just Americans now. They've lost it. And I suppose some people still, I'm proud of my Italian heritage, but they're just like everyone else now because they intermarry. Different people moved into Tontitown. There's still some of that exist, but it's not what it used to be. And you kind of got that even in like the old TV show, The Sopranos. I think a lot of people wanted to have this notion, our Italian community stays together. Does it really, though? Does it really? It seems, over time it just breaks apart and people may look back on it, but they just kind of assimilate into the rest of America. And the question is, and that's happened with white immigrant groups for the most part, can it happen with other immigrant groups like Hispanics and so forth? And the answer is it depends. In some cases it can happen. In others, it's very difficult to happen. It's really interesting. The group that has been very hard to assimilate into the white culture is one that's been here the longest, is Black. Black Americans have a very difficult time assimilating. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but in general, they haven't. But then you get a lot of Hispanics that come in here that you wouldn't know. You would think they are at this point white. They have white mannerisms. They're very, many cases, conservative. And again, not all. That's a broad category. But I saw for the first time in history, it looks like the majority of Latino males are going to vote for Donald Trump. At least that's how it looks right now. So we're seeing a shift there. And if you look at other people that aren't white, but are definitely sort of integrated into America, there's just so many examples. You could say Michelle Malkin, Vivek Ramaswamy, hell, Nick Fuentes, Hispanic descent. Clarence Thomas is a black guy. You could go down the list. So it is possible. And so the GOP idea is that these people will invariably or over time assimilate with us. They'll change us, but we'll change them. But the point is we could still have the America that we knew, even though it's not maybe necessarily majority white, but it really won't make any difference because they will have the white values. Although some people may not be able to assimilate. So that's an idea. Is that possible? I'm skeptical. I don't think it's super likely. Again, it depends on who you bring in. I think in some cases it does work. But the problem is when you look at areas that are majority non-white now in the United States, they're all Democrat. Even in California, which is majority, I think, Hispanic, a lot of Asians, and they still vote heavily Democrat. And if they can become just like us, why haven't they done that in their home countries? Why don't they have liberty in their home countries, a clean environment, very little crime? They typically don't have that. I guess Asians do, but mostly in Hispanic countries, it's very violent with the cartels, and it's not very sanitary and so forth. And they don't have our sense of freedom. So I don't know. And this is the big question. Can you change these people into becoming like us? The GOP, that's what they're banking on, right or wrong, but this is how they're doing it. The other vision broadly is let's make sure that America stays majority white so we can maintain our values. And this is a lot of people support Trump, like with immigration, let's keep the people out. But even more than that, let's deport them and the whole 9 yards, right? But the question is it possible? What would it take for us to get to that point? Because we already have millions that are in this country, legally and illegally. So how are you going to get rid of all of them? Is that a realistic thing that you're going to do? Even J.D. Vance, when he was interviewed, he said, well, maybe we can deport 1 million a year, which sounds like a lot, but it's not really. We've had like 25 million come in. They're all going to have babies. What are you going to do about that? You could be hardcore and say, we don't give a shit. If you've been here the last 10 years, you're getting out. We're cutting everything off. And okay, but how do you do that when you have the courts, you have the media control that is hostile, you have education that's against it, Hollywood is against it. Basically, the entire culture is against that sort of thing, and pretty much every politician. So without LARPing and getting into fantasy, how do you do that? The only way you could possibly do that is do what the left is accusing Trump of wanting to do, is become a dictator, taking power and eliminating most of the judges, overturning most of the media, put our people in there. It would just be an incredible revolution that I don't see the mechanism for that happening. And Trump doesn't even want to do that. I mean, let's face it, who Trump's friends are. Do you really think he's going to start to purge the people that are in charge of the media and Hollywood and all that? Hell no, not in a million years. So that's not going to happen. So how does this mechanism work? I just don't see it as even remotely possible. And that doesn't mean I think we shouldn't do as much as we can. Don't get me wrong. I support Donald Trump. I support tightening the border, deport who we can. But at the same time, I got to be realistic. It's not like they're all going to be kicked out and pretty soon you're in Dallas again. It looks like it's 1970 and it's a bunch of white people. It's not going to happen. When I was in Dallas, I think it was last year, we were at the mall and it was, the people were nice, but I would say white people were less than 20%. It was like, this isn't our country anymore, it looks like. So I don't see that as a realistic scenario happening. And then the third scenario is kind of the more depressing, and a lot of the commentators have talked about this, about how the Kamala's goal is once they get all these illegals or even legals in that are non-white, it'll turn America into a one-party state, kind of like California is now or Hawaii. And then they'll implement all the shitty things like speech controls. They'll have tyranny. They'll be hostile towards white people. And then you'll get we'll turn into a third world country. We will no longer be as prosperous. There'll be violent crime everywhere. You'll have the top elite that have their private security, gated fences. Again, like you see in Central America or South America. And the rest just live in a slum-like conditions, very violent. And a lot of poverty, trash everywhere, tent cities. I don't want to see that, but I think that is sadly, a likely scenario. I hope not, but to me, that if I was betting, I would say that's probably the most likely scenario happening. So it all gets back to, what do we do? Is racial politics, is it even something that can get us anywhere? And I don't think it can. I don't think we're at the point. Everyone's asking, well, how do we get to the promised land? Well, I don't see ourselves voting our way there. I just don't see the mechanism that's going to happen. And no, I'm not trying to discourage you guys from voting for Donald Trump and JD Vance. I think that's going to make it a lot better. And who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not totally wrong. Maybe we can get in enough people that will kind of assimilate, and maybe we can transform this. I don't think so, but maybe. I think that's more likely to happen than some incredible revolution where everyone, all the troublemakers are kicked out and we got our new homeland. I just don't see that happening anytime like in my life in the next 100 years. I don't see that as realistic. So, but I think we got to kind of have our expectations that what we got to go forward is looking at this as a cultural war at this point, or we got to build a sense of community identity and a focus on that and not look towards our salvation through some voting someone in as a political solution. And it's just not going to happen. There's not going to be some American straw man to get taken power and Caesar and take over and kick out all the bad guys. That's just not realistically going to happen. So I don't really have a troubles with the Republican approach. I think that's really the only approach within the voting system that has a chance, meaning reach all different groups of people and try to make them like us, even though that probably won't happen. But from a political view, that's all there really is. And the other option of violent revolution is not in the cards, at least anytime soon. And again, if we go the bad route where we start to become a third world nation, eventually the country will break apart and we'll get new countries and homelands and things will work themselves out. But at the same time, we got to, at this point, develop a sense of community, of identity, who we are, a dream of what we can be, but also have this realistically that Donald Trump is not going to change everything and save the day, but he'll be better. I'm still going to vote for him. I think you should too. But let's just keep this in perspective. And going out in a uniform or marching on the street or engaging in these all like racial politics, it's just a dead end. It's just a dead end. And I think realistically, if I'm just being honest, and I've always tried to be honest with you, I think we have to look at it in that perspective, that we got to look long term, look for positive building up communities and our culture, and not just emphasize some sort of racial politics that's going to save the day, because it won't. It's a dead end. Talk to you guys later.